Unfinished works, I find, are some of the most fascinating works. A picture in a forever state of construction. The skeleton under the skin. Imagining the artist's hand drift over the canvas, pen across paper, their mind at work. You begin to wonder its story. Why was it abandoned? How would it have looked if ever completed? Leonardo da Vinci created an extraordinary legend. A man who mastered the brush, skilled in the mechanisms of war and understanding of nature, driven by survival in a place where life was cheap. Out of his genius came timeless masterpieces that amaze people half a millennium later, and some that were never created. Art is never finished, only abandoned. A process of continual exploration and refining detail. He began few works and never finished, concerned with perfection, never satisfied, wanting to create the truest beauty, an elevation of craft into an intellectual pursuit. The study of light and its reflection, sfumato, the softening of the transition between the colours and tones, an understanding of anatomy, movement, formation, bone structure. How does the blood flow through the veins? How do the eyes open and close? Because in Leonardo's mind, we must study life through observation to understand how nature works. A good painter must depict two principal things: the person and the intentions of their minds. Even in its unfinished state, St. Jerome is still a deeply moving work, an enigmatic rendition surrounded by misty mountains, accompanied by his loyal companion, the lion. The saint is a prayer at the end of his life, an intimate depiction of private revere. As Jerome stares up at his crucifix, his struggle is clear. Leonardo, a painter's most ambitious goal, was to convey a composition with convincing emotion. Outlines are left still to be filled. A lightly sketched church is visible from afar. His fingerprints mark the canvas, evidence of the use of his hand to soften the effect of the sky and landscape. A personal touch that adds to its legacy. Leonardo was here. Even though it remains unfinished in its golden filter, it betrays a highly emotional reaction of the anguish of the painted saint. Work began on St. Jerome around 1480, but its origins are unknown. Through time, it was cut into 5 pieces, with the head cut out, the scarring visible. Today, it is housed in the Vatican Museums in Vatican City. Around this same time, Leonardo was also working on the Adoration of the Magi, arguably his most famous unfinished work. An example of fine detail combined with the process of construction. It depicts the celebration of the Feast of the Epiphany, when, according to Saint Augustine, all the people responded to the call of Christ. Leonardo studied a complex composition, filled with figures. Three kings kneel, with the Virgin and Christ front and centre. A pyramid we see all across Leonardo's work. Perspective was one of the painter's most important aspects. Understanding space and the illusion of depth, the complexities of vision. What is the vanishing point and the horizon line? Perspective was like a musician's mathematical theory of harmony. The architect Leon Battista Alberti documented his understandings of perspective in his treatise Della Pittura, a manuscript of the Renaissance. Work on a temple and a clash of horses can be seen in the background, both subjects left incomplete, though still admirable in their unfinished state. Faces are covered with emotion and expression, devoted, surprised, movements of the mind, conveyed from his studies of Florence, when Da Vinci would walk the streets, sketching the faces he would see, observing the behaviours of man, how they talk, laugh, fight, sketched originally in charcoal, built with black, brown and blue, then layered in white, finely tuned details, smoothed with black and brown, left in a strong contrast between light and shadow, a harmony of sfumato and chiaroscuro. The figure in the bottom right is believed to be Leonardo himself, looking away from the Virgin and Child, common trait amongst the masters of the Renaissance. Michelangelo, Caravaggio, Gentileschi, all hidden within their work. The work was a result of a commission from the Augustinian monks to paint a panel for the high altar in the church of San Donato in Scopeto, outside Florence's city walls. He set out to finish the commission within 30 months. In 1482, he left Florence for Milan, leaving the work unfinished. The monks wanted in vain for the artist to return and complete the commission. Eventually, they commissioned Filippino Lippi to paint the Adoration of the Magi, and was completed in 1496. In 1501, Leonardo's life could be described as unsettled, with very little patience for the brush, geometry being his main priority. Though he undertook a commission to paint the Virgin and Child with Saint Anne, he produced a full-scale cartoon, now lost to us, that when exhibited in Florence was a sensation. Cartoons are preparatory, large-scale drawings intended to be transferred into a wall or canvas painting. Leonardo produced an alternate cartoon that sees Christ blessing St. John the Baptist during a meeting in the desert, housed in the National Gallery in London. A similar image to the exhibited cartoon in Florence 500 years ago. Leonardo never completed the commission. He was turning 50 and was in search of a new patron who could bring to life his military engineerings. This would begin his time with Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander VI, a ruthless warlord. Immortalised from Niccolo Machiavelli's observation in his treatise The Prince. It wasn't the end of the subject of the Virgin and Child for Leonardo. He later produced a painting that he would leave partially unfinished. A similar pyramid composition is prevalent, though is unusual. Mary is portrayed in her mother's St. Anne's lap, holding the child, a dynamic between grandmother, mother and child. In other renditions, this is never the case. The baby lamb is both a symbol of innocence and sacrifice, Christ's sacrifice for humanity. He employed his sfumato technique to soften the transition between the colours of the atmospheric mountain landscape, creating a delicate haziness that rests behind the figures. The incompletion is noticed when glancing at the dark line around the left side of Mary's shawl. In an essay written in 1910 by Sigmund Freud, he claimed a vulture could be seen in the Virgin's garment. An attack by a vulture was one of Leonardo's earliest memories, as written in his Codex Atlanticus, a quote manifestation of passive homosexuality. Unfortunately for Freud, vulture was a mistranslation from the original Codex, and Leonardo had imagined a kite, not a bird. In 2011, the work came into controversy over a restoration project. Reports stated that the restoration posed more dangerous than previously expected. And after its restoration, the claim was the work was damaged by the cleaning and resultantly became brighter than Leonardo would have wanted. Painting is not a work of the hand, but a work of the mind. In 1503, Leonardo began working on an ambitious project that would commemorate the Florentine victory over Milan during the Battle of Angari in 1440. His grand design, 3 times larger than the Last Supper, was intended to decorate a wall in the Grand Council Hall of the Palazzo della Signora in Florence, together with a fresco by Michelangelo on the opposite wall, a man whom Leonardo despised, their feud well documented, bitter in nature, a rivalry for the ages. He began drawing compositional ideas, sketching horses in various poses, and creating models of soldiers in wax. Insightfully, Leonardo gave a description of how to properly depict a battle. One should represent the smoke of artillery lingering in the air, the dust tossed up by the movement of horses and combatants. The dust, being a thing of earth, has weight. It is the finest part that rises highest, and the least visible. It will seem almost the same colour as the air. Some might be shown disarmed and beaten down by the enemy. You may see riderless horses rushing amongst the enemy, their mane flying in the wind, wreaking destruction with their hooves. And there must not be no single spot of flat ground that is not trampled with gore. In short, it is glorified madness. Leonardo used an experimental technique inspired by the Roman method of encaustic painting, which involved using a ground of heated beeswax to which oil pigments were applied. Traditional frescoes did not allow for the transition of light, too important for Leonardo not to include. This would quicken the drying time of the completed sections. The method proved to be disastrous. The wax-based pigments could not sustain the heat, and the mural began to drip away. This, and factoring in his competition with Michelangelo, is likely what led to its abandonment. Michelangelo would never begin work on his mural. Only a copy of his cartoon remains. Florence would hire Giorgio Vasari to replace the deteriorated remains of Leonardo's work in 1563. Many artists have been inspired to reproduce Leonardo's battle scene. Leonardo's scene depicted war's bestiality, a melee of terrified horses and fierce soldiers, no good nor evil, just violence against violence in a frightening image of death.